It's about that time to open up the Peacock and Williamson mailbag. Tons of great questions here. We're talking NFL draft, of course, draft trades. Are they likely? Where are they likely to happen in this NFL draft that might be one of the wildest we have ever seen? All that and more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. We love all of our everydayers out there. Let us know you stopped by. Hit that thumbs up if you're on YouTube. And of course, if you're new to the program, welcome. We appreciate you as well. And stick around. Hit subscribe on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. We got you covered every day talking about the NFL, all the latest news. And of course, the NFL draft is the topic right now. And it is on today's show as well, which is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. All right, Matt, let's get into this thing. And I think it's a fascinating draft. And I think one of the reasons it fascinates me the most is because of this question by Dave. And he says, does the lack of blue chip players in the first round this year make draft day trades more or less likely? And I want to get your opinions on the trade part of that question. But I do just think overall, the consensus is going to be so far off this year because I think there's just less of a consensus between teams. I think it's going to be more eye of the beholder. There's so many. I mean, if you look at the deepest position in the draft, which is defensive lineman, there are so many different players that would be a huge fit for one team's scheme and maybe a player that's eliminated from being able to be drafted early by another team because of the style of defense that they play. It is actually, the more I look at it, it is a fantastic draft to run a 3-4 defense. Like old school.
Oh, trust me, my Steeler guys are into it, right?
I mean, old school Steelers, even more so the old school Steelers than the new school. Although
right.
I always think of it's like, okay, where's your you
need a Casey Hampton, throw him in there. You need a Joey Porter, throw him in there. Right, we got him. Right.
330-pound defensive tackle in every round. By the way, there's like a 450-pound tackle if you want him out of.
I didn't know about him, but maybe he'll end up in St. Vincent's with me in the summer.
I think he's in Florida. I think he's the Florida defensive tackle.
Oh, the Florida guy. Yeah. I do know you're talking about.
I don't think he's gonna be drafted. But every round has a 330-pound nose tackle. Every round has like 10 stand-up edge rushers.
Yep.
So I think the 4-3 teams, you might be shocked at how early some of the more complete
the three techniques
linemen go.
Yeah.
Actual, 260, 270-pound defensive ends that they pass over the 245-pound stand-up edge rushers that another team is like, thank you very much for this player falling into my lap.
That's a great point. And back to the question, I just thought it was a really good discussion. I don't know that I know the answer. But is it a coincidence that all 32 teams currently own their 32 picks? By this time last year, give or take, Houston had traded out of the first round, not even knowing what was going to be there for them. Would teams have been more or less likely to trade their first round pick for a player like a DK Metcalf type trade, but a bigger one if those picks were more valuable? Would Tyreek Hill ended up on the Chiefs if the Miami valued first-round picks more this year, or vice versa. And again, I know you bring it back to the Niners, I bring it back to the Steelers, but because they traded DK Metcalf, the Steelers are a draft pick short. And so often on my Steelers show, we talk about at 21 where they pick, could they trade down 5-6 spots and pick up a day 2 pick? But it always comes back to, who's going to trade for that spot? Who wants to get the 15? Who wants to get the 13? Who wants to get the 22? What player can they just not live without? That's where I keep coming up with, I don't know who those guys are.
Yeah, it's exactly my thoughts.
Everyone's
going to be willing to move down because the grade for player 5 to 25 might not be that different. So of course you would like to trade down, but who's going to be the team that
Day 2 looks good. Day 2 looks good.
And then if you're let's use the Steelers at pick 21. And I've talked about at pick 24, the Minnesota Vikings who only have 4 draft picks.
Great example. Better example.
Their team that is definitely be listening to trades. Well, the offer you might get is from a team coming up from deep in round 2. Well, is that too far to go down? Now you're not selecting from one of those players anymore that you have a similar grade on. And so it might have to be
and maybe you're getting a future pick in that type of deal too. And that doesn't help you for April.
Yeah, I would turn it around on those Steelers fans that are asking you that question and be like, okay, it's always ideal to add a 3rd round pick because you move down a couple of spots and get someone who has a similar grade. I mean, that's great if it can happen. And maybe those offers are there. But ask that person, okay, well, who is the player that
we talk about all the time
that is trading up for? And the other part of that is like, okay, well, what if the trade up is from deep in round 2, not just moving down spots? Like you got to move down to pick 40. Niners have picked 43. What if the Niners call? Are you going to move all the way down to 43?
I want next year's 2nd. I want a 3rd. I mean, but then I leave the draft without a premium guy. I mean, I'm far from a 1st round pick. I bring up the Steelers because they don't have a 2nd, but your Vikings call is an even better one. They don't have a day 2 pick, period. Now, the wild card to me that would be more Viking than Steelers is what about Jackson Dart? Is this quarterback situation so bad, or that Sanders starts to fall? Does somebody eventually say, I'll give you a haul to get to 11 for Shador, or I'll give you a haul to get to 20 for Dart? And why I mentioned the Steelers is now every mock draft I see has the Steelers taking Dart at 21. Just because I think these mockers think he's going to be a 1st round pick and there's no other real landing spot. You know what I mean?
Put him. And if you're the Steelers and you don't care about drafting Dart, you absolutely love that.
I just say that's good for a team like them, or it's great for Minnesota, or right.
Like, kind of get with your scouts and be like, hey, drop Jackson Dart's name. We want Daniel Jeremiah.
We're bringing him in for a visit. We're going to let everyone see. We're taking him the best dinner. Right. Yeah. Love him. But then the team trades the 20 right in front of you, and you don't get the benefit from the trade down anyways.
Well, that pushes the player that it might have drafted that you actually want to you.
True. Yeah.
Even if it's just one extra player on the board, I think teams would, do backwards for that sometimes. I think a lot more teams willing to trade down because of that. But I think the real thing here is that we always are, and I say this every single time, and we get. It's human nature, Matt. We get locked into this group think thing, and even the best of the best, Daniel Jeremiah and Mel Kiper and like the best draft analysts, the most plugged in guys, McShay, all of them, they'll get duped. Like literally Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, every single person in 2021 said, lock it in. Mac Jones, pick 3 to the San Francisco 49ers. It's going to happen.
Yep.
And it wasn't the case. It wasn't happening. And so like they don't know everything that's going on, and you get a lot of group think, and then the fans believe the group think, and then that process just keeps adding to itself and stacking onto itself. And you always see somebody who reacts to a mock draft like, this is the worst mock draft I've ever seen. Blank will never happen. And you almost can't, like, there's some things that like I don't think Travis Hunter's going to fall out of the top 10, right? Pretty sure it's not going to happen. That'd be a pretty unrealistic mock draft at this point. But a lot of times there's stuff that you'll hear someone say, that will never happen. What a terrible mock draft. This team will never do that. And you can't get in the habit of saying that, because the real draft is always way more crazy than the craziest mock draft you see in the lead up. And I think this year, because everybody's grades are going to be so much different, it's going to be even wilder and more off of the consensus. So there's going to be some shocks in this first round. Will that lead to trades? I'm not sure, but I would bet that there's at least some trades in the first round of this draft. Like all 32 teams are not going to make a pick. No way. Can't happen.
No way. I mean, that part I don't think will happen, but I do think there'll be fewer trades than usual, maybe, just because I don't know who the trader uppers are. But how about this? And it wasn't a question we picked, but somebody did ask, what would it cost the Saints to get to 1 to get a quarterback, or give or take? And it made me think. I was about to say like 5 minutes ago, I don't think there's going to be a Bryce Young 10-1 type of trade, or anyone get out of 1 type of trade. But the Saints are kind of crazy. What if the Saints said, I mean, all of us, Schefter, McShay, all these guys are like, well, there's no chance of Tennessee trades off of 1. But what if the Benson family's like, we don't really care what we have to pay. We'll give you Olave, Carr, number 10, next year's first, and a couple day 2 picks.
It probably has to be.
You know what I mean? Right.
It would probably
maybe more than that, right?
The
And
next 2 firsts. It would have
whatever
to be,
you want, right?
It would have to be so insane.
Bryce Young type of deal. I include Olave to be the DJ Moore, you know?
Right. Yeah. And it'd have to be so insane that every Saints fan is like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened.
Yeah.
Like, that's how much you would probably have to give up. Do you think it's a coincidence that, and it feels like it happened like on the spot, that Cam Ward's pro day was going down and the Giants immediately signed Russell Wilson?
No, it's funny. You mentioned McShay. I urge people to do it because it's very cheap. He has a Substack or whatever where you pay $2 a month or whatever. I didn't even hit him up to try to like get it for free.
Yeah.
Like, he's busy. I'm not going to bother.
It's a no-brainer. Yeah.
But his email came today with a really good write-up about that, basically just saying, don't you find it a little bit odd that 2 hours after the pro day, Wilson gets signed? You know, like,
right.
We're out. You know, we tried do our best, and we had a conversation. We went there, and
they had some phone conversations. They were there face to face. They had that meeting, and they're like, hey, what could it be? And it's just like, yep, not going to happen. Cam Ward, lock it in, pick one, right? That's what it feels like.
I will say, and I'm not predicting anything, and I will be there, and trust me, I won't be included in these meetings, but the owners' meetings are a pretty interesting environment. I mean, it's just owners, every head coach, basically every, like, running back coaches aren't there. I mean, it is just the creme de la creme, and you'll see 2 GMs they don't hide much. It's not like the combine. Everyone's in this Breakers unbelievably wealthy establishment. And 2 GMs are in the corner having coffee, you know, that you wouldn't think, what are they talking about? Maybe they were buddies because they were on, you know, Kent State staff 20 years ago, but who knows? Or maybe they're talking about the first overall pick, you know.
All right, more from the Peacock and Williamson mailbag. I want to talk about schemes and how things might be evolving. What's the new trend in the NFL? Mid-round running backs, quarterbacks, a whole lot more. Stay tuned. In this episode of Peacock and Williamson, brought to you by Game Time. Close your eyes and think about it for a second, unless you're driving. If you're driving, just imagine it, right? Because we're all sports fans, and think about those moments at live events that you've experienced in your life and how amazing some of those moments were. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person, and getting tickets should be awesome and exciting for that event and not stressful. That's where Game Time comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices, and you can find some phenomenal last-minute tickets at Game Time. Happy opening day, Major League Baseball, by the way, to everybody out there. I'm not going to
didn't even know.
The stinky Dodgers that were playing last week in another country. This is opening day today. And I've gotten some phenomenal deals on going see my San Francisco Giants. I'm a bridge away. I'm 10 minutes away from being in the city, watching the San Francisco Giants. So I can, at the drop of a hat, go on the Game Time app and find some last minute tickets and go catch a ball game. Phenomenal. I've found some awesome deals on concert tickets as well. And Game Time Picks is a new feature curation that makes it easier to find better value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, whatever it is, especially those big venues, so you don't have to wade through thousands of potential available tickets. So download the Game Time app, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. How the Pittsburgh Pirates looking this year, Matt?
It's funny. I had to do a quick look because I didn't know today was opening day. They've been pretty much dead to me since Bonds and Bonilla left, to be honest with you. But I might have to use the app because I'm going to pay attention every time Paul Skeens goes to the mound. So that's today.
Right there. That guy.
It's unbelievable. I mean, I don't know anything, but it's unbelievable.
The way his fastball moves, that two-seamer, I mean, it should be an illegal pitch. It's unbelievable.
So quick story on that. A good friend of mine, Rob King, is now the Steelers. He's the voice of the Steelers. He just finished his first season, but his background is Penguins and Pirates. And he actually was born and grew up in Cooperstown. I mean, he's a huge baseball dude. And, you know, we were at the combine having a couple beverages, and I was asking him, like, how good is Skeens? And he's like, he's the best pitching prospect I've ever seen. I'm like, really? I mean, is that something you could comment on? Is this guy that good? I mean, that's why every time I watch him, I'm like, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, it's
you love the start And arm problems can derail some of the most phenomenal, phenom talents that are young and just have ridiculous ability. And so many guys are throwing like 100 miles an hour now. It's all about velocity. That so much stress is being put on pitchers' arms. So, and guys don't throw as deep as they used to. Like Nolan Ryan can't possibly exist because nobody would ever let someone throw as much as Nolan Ryan threw. So it's hard to really put them in that category. But as far as stuff, it's ridiculous. He's
okay.
Like Kerry Wood. Remember when Kerry Wood was striking out 20 guys? In the late 90s. It's that kind of stuff. It's kind of crazy.
I'm a fan of his girlfriend too.
Good to be Paul Skeens right now. That's
right. Good time.
Looking at the mailbag here, this is a great question about schemes and where the league is going, Matt. A question this morning from Bruce. He says, seems like there's a pattern at this point for how long-term NFL play styles change. Teams start big to run better. Defenses get bigger. Teams get faster to take advantage. Defenses get smaller, quicker. Rinse, repeat. Is it me, or does it seem like the water never finds its level? It is not you, Bruce. It doesn't ever find its level because it can't, because you're always trying to defeat what the new kid on the block is doing that's taking advantage of what the league is already doing. It's going to be constantly evolving, and that's kind of what's great about it. And right now, obviously, what we're doing is we're getting lighter, and that's been happening for a while, throwing the ball more, which means some teams are saying, okay, we're going to go the other way, and we're seeing maybe a little bit of a comeback of the running game and running backs. And that lines up with this draft. And I think some teams are probably going to talk themselves into drafting some of these running backs really high. And so we might see a top 10, top 5 running back this year and a couple more running backs in the first round, which is kind of starting to be unheard of. And then the teams that don't subscribe to that are going to be like, thank you very much, because we were never going to take a running back that high, and we don't think it's built around that. We're going to go a different direction. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's going to be fascinating. And it also adds to the draft where, like, legitimately, Matt, thinking about running backs and, some teams getting a little bit bigger and trying to beat up on the teams that are getting smaller and faster. You think about a player like Jihad Campbell, who is a prototype height, weight, speed linebacker, but that can cover, but that can still thump you in the running game. Like, those guys are going to become more valuable because you need to be able to do both. And there's all these linebackers are 220 pounds and former safeties. And so I think you'll see some of that, but the running backs, it'll be fascinating for me to see where they go, because how many teams and GMs are going to sit there and stare at their draft board and not take the player who's at the top grade-wise? Because for a lot of those picks at the start of the draft, Ashton Genty is going to be the top name on the list, and you might take a name below him. And then once he goes, or Marion Hampton and Travion Henderson, and at some point in the middle of the first round, those guys might be the top name. And do you not draft the player who's on the top of your draft board? So it has to be a organizational philosophy to not draft the running backs, because the grades are going to be high on those guys this year.
So the short answer to this question is because there's no perfect defense. Like, if cover 3 was a perfect defense, everybody would run it. There is no perfect defense. There's cover 3 beaters. There's cover 2 beaters. And these offensive minds, I mean, this is very rudimentary, but the offensive minds dictate what play is called. It's up to them. The defense has to be reactionary no matter what. But even to get more specific, when you mentioned Campbell, it really came to my mind too, that I think what a lot of teams are going to look for, I think everyone knows at this point that too high, no explosives, lighter boxes has become a massive theme. And therefore, Henry's running against a 7-man box instead of an 8-man box. I mean, that's the short of it. There's much more in depth than that.
And that box weighs less than it used to on top of it.
Exactly. There's those 400-pound nose tackles we talked about aren't for everybody anymore. And there's definitely not teams lined up 2 of them in front of Ray Lewis with Saragusa and Sam Adams. You know what I mean? Just eating up like 4 defenders when 700 pounds of man.
Yeah.
But the other thing about Campbell I thought was interesting, just because I think this is going to be a trend too, is because I'm playing with safeties as linebackers and 4-man fronts almost predominantly, if I can't get home with 4 like the Eagles do so well, I think I need a off-the-ball linebacker with legit pass rush skills, not just an okay blitzer or an okay slot corner blitzer, but I mean someone that can beat a guard with a swim move. I mean, like real pass rush skills. You know what I mean? I think that could be a new thing to keep an eye on.
It's a perfect example of this draft class is Jalen Walker. I think I would put him on the poster of the 2025 NFL draft. Does he go pick 5? Does he go pick 20 something? I have no idea.
Yeah.
But
I would understand both.
Yeah.
And Campbell's similar. I mean, they're really not that different of a player.
They're not. Yeah, they're definitely not. I think Campbell's got a little more natural ability to play off ball. I don't like Walker.
Yes, I do
Walker,
too.
like, man, I do love the way Walker plays, and he gets high marks from his character, and he finishes, and so he's a fun player. I wish he would have just played as an edge guy the entire season, so we could have that complete evaluation. But even then, he still is a little stubby, a little short for that. So it's just it's got to be the right team and the right scheme for a lot of players in the fits. But as far as the schemes, yeah, I mean, that will never end. You don't find the water with that. It was like everyone was trying to defend, the shotgun and Eric Coryell and then Bill Walsh comes along, and now it's like, oh shoot, okay, we got to be faster. We got to cover the middle of the field. What are we going to do? So, and all of a sudden there's Holmgren and there's Shanahan, and there's all these coaches that are running this scheme, and it's tearing up the league. And so now you get the Tampa 2, and so the Tampa 2 defends that, and so it's now all of a sudden teams can have to change what they're doing and beat Tampa 2, and then the cover 3 you mentioned it was all the rage, and then it's like, okay, well now we know how to beat that, so teams have to go figure out another way to do things, and so it's always a give and take on defense. And yeah, you're right, the offense knows the play call, the defense doesn't, and
as we often do, Niners, Steelers. I mean, but Walsh's concepts just took over the league, of course. Quick slants, three-step drops, ball comes out now, 6 inches in front of the numbers, revolutionary stuff. Well, that's why LeBeau came up with the zone blitz, because he's just going to put random people into those slot windows that no one saw before. You know what I mean? I mean, that's how it works.
Exactly. It is getting. I think we've hit peak small size. I don't know. Yeah. We're getting bigger again for sure.
We are. Yeah. And teams are also, the Eagles are the best example. If you're not going to allow us, everyone still wants explosives. And I think that's very analytically driven. If we don't allow explosive, we win games. If we create explosive, we win games. Just look at the numbers. And I think the Eagles are the best example, who's a revolutionary front office, saying, if you're going to live in 2 high shells against our 2 receivers, well, we need an explosive back. I need to get explosives on the ground now, as opposed to Randy Moss over the top. And again, I mean, this is a goofy Steeler thing, but it's true for a lot. And I use those examples because I'm so close to the team. When you have Metcalf and Pickens now, as opposed to just Pickens, you're going to get a lot more cover 2. Like Seattle got a ton of cover 2 last year just because of Metcalf. And the Steelers ran into a ton of heavy boxes because they didn't have anybody to get them out of the boxes. They didn't make teams fear their explosiveness. So it's funny to me that the Steelers, that are Jerome Bettis and Bam Morris, the running backs they've been interviewing are like Trevion Henderson and Tootin and all the fast guys. Like, maybe we can create explosives because we have these 2 receivers that are going to demand cover 2, instead of Najee, who can't get more than 8 yards,
Let's get more specific with some of those names at running back. We've got
cool.
Hopper about those mid-round running backs. We know who the top names are. Who else? And there's always some really good backs that come out of nowhere to be stars in the NFL. Next. So this question comes from a Steelers fan, and it's more Steelers related. And I know you've looked at a lot of running backs because the Steelers have the need in this NFL draft. But Steelers Blitz says, who's your favorite 3rd, 4th round running backs after the top guys? Who I'm interested to hear it as well, Matt, from you. Who are your favorite mid-round backs? And are some of the top backs going to fall to the mid-round because there are so many good running backs in this class, or are they all just going to go early and you're not going to find that value where you hope some really good players fall down to you? And I think about Caleb Johnson is kind of the one where I think about is like, is he going to be there in the 3rd round, or is he still going to be just a 2nd round guy? Because consensus board is Genty's a top 10 pick. Omarion Hampton's probably going to be a 1st rounder. Yeah. I love Trevion Henderson, especially if you're running any of the wide zone concepts. He's dynamic as heck to me. He could go in the 1st round. He'll be gone by the 2nd round for sure. Quinshon Judkins, his teammate, great feet, big back. He's a 2nd round guy.
Going early,
and I would probably take all these guys around later than where they're going to go. So my team would never draft any of them. But who does fall? Do any of the top backs fall a little bit to the 3rd round? And if not, then who are your favorite mid-round guys?
Yeah, and it is weird because the Barkley, Henry success, maybe a team might take a running back this year back to our previous conversation, earlier than they would have 2 years ago, analytically driven or whatever. But, and I'm not going to make this Steelers specific. I do think there's a lot of really intriguing mid-round targets, but I have to think after the guys you mentioned, you're probably going to get dudes with third-round grades in the fourth round, dudes with fourth-round grades in the sixth round. I heard Mel Kiper say about a month ago that he had, I think it was 35 draftable running backs in terms of his grades, and I've heard others say the same. So there's going to be undrafted free agents that usually would have been drafted, so I think there's a lot of Pro Bowls in the future here. I don't know how many teams need them. There's not going to be 35 drafted. That's my point, why I brought up the number. There's probably going to be 18 drafted, and a lot of them day 3 guys. So I think there's a lot of value to be had. I'll throw a couple names at you. I think Dylan Sampson and Bracial Tootin are both similar in that they're not little, but they're not big, heavy plotters, and they're really explosive. Both have some fumbling issues. They're fast as can be. Tootin was the best tester amongst all the running backs in the best testing year in running back history. I think that's noteworthy too. Two of the very opposite are Miami's Damian Martinez and Arizona State's Cam Scatabo. They're just really, really, really hard to tackle and nasty and trendsetters and give me the ball, give me the ball, give me the ball. I mean, there's even guys like Jarquez Hunter, who is a really good receiver, or Jaden Blue from Texas, that Brashard Smith from SMU, that'll probably be returners, LaQuint Allen from Syracuse. And at some point, we have to have a kickoff return question, too, but that might be owners' meetings. So I think those rules are going to change. But some of these, like, scat back types, there's a lot of those. I mean, so there's really every shape and size. DJ Giddens made a lot of noise at the combine. Maybe he sneaks into the very end of day 2 from Kansas State. There's a ton. There really is. RJ Harvey's been on the radar for a long time now. Devin Neal from Kansas. So both those guys are, most years to me, easy third rounders that you might get in the 5th.
ATN, another one.
Yeah, I thought about him. He's okay. Yeah.
He probably did him on day 3. I mean, there's a ton of those guys. And so
there's so many. Jordan James from Oregon was the guy I was really high on, had a really bad combine, but still.
Again, like, who cares?
Who cares? Right.
Like, find and like I know it was a big athletic class and testing class, but again, like go look at who's good in the NFL, and it's like, yeah, sure, 4.5. You can be the league in rushing. You run a 4.5, and you're just good and have vision and you're tough. And it's like, so yeah, Jordan James slides to the 6th, 7th round. I'll take that all day long, right?
Yeah. We've been talking about this Unlocked on Dynasty a lot too. It's like, man, the receiver class might not be great. It's not like last year's quarterback class for fantasy reasons, but just find landing spots for these guys. And by midseason, half of them are going to be starters. I mean, is he Austin Eckler to get hurt, and then boom, your 4th round running back is in,
Last one here from Joey Bag Donuts, who's always bringing the heat when it comes to the mailbag. He says, why is there so few NFL quarterback prospects when there's so many quarterbacks playing college football? Like, there's only 2 that are even decent, and half the people don't even like 2 of those guys out of 130 quarterbacks in college football. What's going on there, Matt?
I think the short answer to that one is it's just really hard to be an NFL quarterback. I mean, you have to have the baseline tools that are much higher baseline than the college baseline tools. I mean, you watch some of these receivers and you're like, who is throwing them the ball? I mean, like, is that a high school kid? And then it's just the mental processing and the dedication to the sport. I mean, it's a very, very demanding job.
Right. And the other thing is there's a lot of utility and usefulness to have a rotational pass rusher, like the Bayshell Tootin of quarterbacks. Need not apply, right? Like that doesn't
Dylan Gabriel from Oregon or whatever, right?
Like Dylan Gabriel from Oregon. It's like he's much more likely to win a Grey Cup in the CFL than a Super Bowl as a starting quarterback, right?
Your boy Trey Lance just went to the Canadian Football League. Perfect example,
Yeah, great for him. He gets to play finally. Hopefully, hopefully he can win that job, right? My goodness.
Otherwise, it'll totally disappear. But I mean, along those lines, last note, you mentioned, that you've rotational DNs, running back plays X amount of snaps. every old school dude on the planet lost their mind because Anthony Richardson tapped out once. Like can't possibly one time. That guy's a loser. Can't win with him.
Yeah. All right. Thanks everybody for your questions. Always phenomenal. Apologies to the ones we did not get to. Keep them coming. You can drop them anytime in the YouTube comments. Of course, at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. We'll open up the mailbag again next week. And of course, thanks for making us your first listen. And for your second listen, check out one of the other 200 podcasts here on the network, including Locked On NFL Draft. And stay tuned for our NFL mock draft special network wide, which is coming. And we're making the picks behind the scenes right now. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. And of course, subscribe on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts to Peacock and Williamson.